Welcome back to Smith Coding and Design. I hope everyone is having a great start to 2025. I've had a rough morning today. It started with my son. He's 6 years old. He spent all morning drawing a picture of a Nintendo Switch. I asked him to get his socks on so that he could prepare to get on the bus. And for some reason, asking him to put on his socks sent him in a fit of rage, where he then went on a destructive path, destroyed his drawing and his art supplies, etc. So he is now grounded from his art supplies for a few days. Oh, the joys of parenting sometimes. But luckily, I've had just enough coffee to stimulate the neurons, and so let's go ahead and get into the video. What I wanted to discuss today is toolpath. So I think the age of AI is sort of upon us. You know, the next thing you know, your granny's going to be an Android. All jokes aside, I started using toolpath sort of the later half of 2024. I started with a free trial. After that, I decided it was for me, and then proceeded to go ahead and purchase a year. I've used it a lot now. In fact, I run all of my Xometry parts through toolpath. And so what I wanted to do is just sort of go into how it helps me, because I think this video might be different than how others are using it, and really tie that back into Xometry, because again, if you've been following my videos, you probably know around 90% or so of the work I do does come through Xometry, right? Eventually, hopefully, I will diversify where I get my work from. But right now, with also having a 9-to-5, Xometry just sort of fits that niche for me perfectly. Okay, so moving on, if we just scroll down here, you can see the various jobs. Obviously, they're going to be blurred out because I can't show you Xometry parts. But if we look at the bottom here, I mean, you can see 6 pages of parts that I have ran through toolpath. So why do I do that? So if any of you have used Xometry in the past, or maybe you're just getting started with Xometry, you run into the situation where the good jobs go fast. I mean, a lot of times before you can even examine the part, determine that you can manufacture it, the part is already taken from the board, and somebody else is making money from that part. And so that was a big issue for me, because I am, we'll say, a completionist or perfectionist, right? I get anxiety if I cannot be 100% sure I can manufacture the part, I can get the part done in the correct time frame and get it out of my shop store and to my customer's door when they need it. And I also want to make sure that I'm not rushed and that I can, you know, produce a quality part that meets the specs of the customer, right? And so when those good jobs come up, I ran into the situation where it almost became a dice roll, where I didn't have enough time to really examine all the features on the part before I could, you know, accept it. And so I would always get anxiety where I thought I might get into this situation where I accept a job, and then I would not be able to complete that job. And that actually did happen to me once, and that was with a surface finish. Although toolpath wouldn't have caught the surface finish, there was a part with a 16 RA surface finish that I accepted, which I don't have a profilometer, so I was not comfortable with making that part. So I had to go through Xometry and obviously end up not making that part. But I did not want to get into that situation again, where there could be a feature where I don't have the right tool or something where I couldn't make the part. So that's where toolpath comes into play for me. So if you look here to the right of the jobs or of the parts here, you'll see sort of a completion percentage. These first 2 parts are for demonstration purposes. They're actually just from the Fusion 360 cam samples. I figured I would show them off because I can actually show you the parts, right? These other ones that are blurred out, I can't, because they are Xometry parts. And so what this allows me to do is upload a step file from Xometry, and then very quickly I can look at the completion percentage here on the right. And if it's 100%, I know that I can indeed manufacture that part. I have the right tools, So that takes a lot of the thought process out. And we'll go into some more details here in a minute. We'll look inside of these two parts, and we'll sort of cover some other things that I find helpful. But number one, I want to know as fast as possible, can I manufacture this part? And if the answer is yes, then I feel more comfortable selecting and accepting that job from Xometry. So that is the number one goal. It's helped me win quite a few jobs. Again, because I very quickly know if I can manufacture the part. So let's go ahead and go into this bearing mount example real quick, and we'll go through some other things that I like to use toolpath for, because we'll go over sort of the AI generated toolpaths and exporting them to Fusion here in a minute. But again, for my purposes, that helps a little, but not a lot. What I'm more interested in is, can I make the part? Do I have the right tools, etc. So after I know that the part is manufacturable, so it has some high score, it could be 100, that's awesome, but it could be 80, 90, you know, something where you know you have a chance of making this part. We then can open it up and we can just sort of look at a few of the tabs here. So the first thing I like to look at are the number of setups, right? Because the more setups that you need, the more costly it is to make that part, right? Changing setups is a lot of downtime. You're either changing fixtures or you're changing the orientation in your part. You're changing the orientation of your part in your current fixture, and your spindle is not running during that time. So this here, we can see this is a simple part. It only has 2 setups. Normally I'm not that lucky. Most of the parts I do require 3 or 4 setups. But nonetheless, I like to come over here and just look at how the AI would determine this setup. So how the AI would hold the part. Obviously, there's not a vise or any fixturing here, but you can see op 1, we would hold it like so, and op 2, you know, we'd sort of flip the part, right? Just your typical machining strategy. So that is good news. So that would tell me right away, hey, this is going to be an easy part to make. Let's go ahead and most likely accept it. The next thing I like to look at are tools. So the number one thing I look at here are the number of tools, right? Because I have a 12 station umbrella. So obviously if the number of tools required to make this part is more than 12, that means I really need to come over here to the right. Sorry, my face is sort of covering a lot of this, but you can sort of scroll down and look at the list of tools here, and if it's obviously more than 12 in my situation, I'd want to see what I can optimize, right? You'll notice there are 2 1/2 inch tools here. There's a looks like a long reach and a rougher, but let's just say maybe there was a 1/2 inch finisher and a 1/2 inch rougher tool in the list. Maybe I could get away by roughing with my finishing tool, right? We can play those games if we have to sort of optimize the amount of tools that we're using. The next thing I like to do, and take this with a grain of salt because I am still working on my presets for estimation, but I like to come up with a cost just to make sure that what I'm accepting from Xometry is profitable. And again, I have 0 overhead, 1-man show in my garage, and again my machine is paid off, so no overhead, so that helps me a lot. But again, what we can do here is, you see there's this preset over here to the right, so we can go in, we can edit the preset, and what toolpath will do is based on the material, you know, how much you're charging per setup, and it actually takes into consideration, which is a big deal here, the overall machine time to make the part. Let me move this browser window to the right here. You get an estimate there at the bottom, which for me right now it's saying $240.06. So again, take that number with a grain of salt, because I do need to go in. That would be one of my goals for 2025, is to really get that preset and get the estimates working to where I want them. But anyway, you can take that value, you can compare it to what Xometry is offering, and then you very quickly know, is the job profitable? Is it in the ballpark? Hey, let's go ahead and accept it. You know, if it's drastically lower than what you think you need to be profitable, maybe you can go ahead and offer feedback or an update through Xometry, and maybe you'll get lucky and they'll raise the price and you'll be able to get that job. So that's the main way that I use Toolpath. Again, not really looking at the AI generated CAM, which we'll talk about the benefits of that in a minute, but it really allows me to accept a job quicker than I could manually on my own, right? So that is the main goal. I know that the part is 100% machinable. I know that I have the tools, and I can very quickly determine if the part is profitable. So the next thing we'll do is we'll just briefly go over the strategy tab here. We'll pull all of the AI generated toolpaths in Fusion 360. We'll talk about them. So if you sort of hover over the toolpaths to the right here, again, my face is in the way. You know, it will name and highlight the toolpath that is being produced through the AI, right? And I'm not going to pretend that I know all the details of the AI under the hood, right? But it does do that for both setups or all the setups that your part requires. So that's nice. And again, if we go here to export to Fusion, you get this nice little key. You then put that into Fusion 360 through their extension, and you can pull the part in, and I'll show you that here in a second. The last thing that I wanted to do, let's go back to parts. Let's look at this other one, and again, this is just for demonstration purposes. So this one, you know, you're seeing the red here, which is basically saying that I don't have a tool to machine this feature. So again, this is for demonstration purposes. You might be thinking, well, why don't you have a tool to, you know, machine this? I really do. This is just for demonstration purposes, right? So when you get that score here, that completion percentage, and it's not 100%, you open it up, you might run into a case like this where it says, hey, you know, you don't have a tool to machine these features. And then you can very quickly decide, okay, what kind of tool do I need? And how quickly can I get that tool? Can I get it in time to meet the requirements from the customer or not? The other thing that I found helpful is sometimes you'll run your cut config, and we'll talk about cut configs maybe here in a minute, and you'll run into a case where, hey, it will show these features that can't be machined with your tools. Well, what you can do is if you click over here on the edit, so this aluminum cut config is my configuration, you can actually use the default or the starter that is provided through Toolpath using their tools, and then it will give you a 100% score. And then what you can do is you can go look at the tool that Toolpath used from their default library, and that will very quickly give you an idea of what sort of tool that you need to purchase. So that is very helpful. So let's just go back to summary now. We'll go back to parts. Again, we're going to hop in Fusion 360 now. So you have the sort of the main concept or the main way that I use Toolpath. So now let's talk about some of the added benefits. So I know a lot of you guys are going to be interested in the AI generated toolpaths, right? So this is what you get. Here's the extension. You would just go to import program. You would enter your key that I showed you a few minutes ago, and then it would automatically import it into Fusion 360, and you would get your list of toolpaths here to the right. So we can just quickly step through them. Let me click the bubble here so we're on the right side of the part. We'll just quickly step through them. Now there are a couple benefits here that I wasn't expecting when I first started generating my toolpaths with AI. And so the major benefit is really you get basically an instantaneous second opinion, right? So if there's a feature that you don't know how to machine, you can see how AI would do it, right? So it's like calling your buddy at the shop down the street, right? Say, hey George, how would you do this, right? So you can basically very quickly look at how AI would do it, and you can see if that will translate into your own flow. And so how this has helped me particularly is when it comes to 3D surfacing or doing 3D contours, because what I normally do is I just always use a ball end mill. And through Toolpath, I noticed a lot of the times that they would be using a bullnose. And so what that would allow you to do is essentially save a tool. You could come in, you could rough out some features, and then you could use the radius at the end of the flute to go ahead and do some 3D surfacing. So that was sort of an enlightening moment that helped me improve my processes. So again, it's just nice to be able to have basically another methodology that you can very quickly generate just to understand how to do certain features that you may not be comfortable with doing, right? So it can help you learn there. The next thing that it really helped me do, and I'm just going to jump over to this template as an example, is Toolpath really forces you to update all of your tool libraries and get them in order. So it's a little painful at the beginning because you have to go add a preset to all the tools in your library. They do provide a tool that helps you do that, but let's go ahead and look at an example here. If I open up my libraries, you'll notice I have underscore TPL now. I did that to let myself know that those are optimized for Toolpath. So let's just click on my aluminum roughing end mills for a minute here. We'll just click on, it really doesn't matter. Let's just go to this Haas 1/2 3 flute rougher, right? And if we go to cutting data, you'll notice there are a number of presets here, right? And so those presets have your speeds and feeds, your depth of cut, plunge rates, width of cut, etc. For the various strategies. And what you will do, I'll show you here in a minute, you will tie these strategies in with your cut config in Toolpath. So that's how the AI will determine the speeds and feeds, etc. to use when it generates its toolpaths. So this is very helpful. And why is it helpful? Let's close this because once you have that set up, even if you're not using Toolpath, basically in this example here, this template, I manually generated all of these toolpaths. Well, now when I, for example, generate this adaptive clearing, I now have my preset here. And so I can very quickly select the right preset that sets up my speeds and feeds, my width of cut, depth of cut, optimal load, all that good stuff. So there's no more guessing involved. I can click generate the toolpath, select a preset, and then I'm pretty much finished with that toolpath. The other thing that you could do is, you can always go over here and you can say save as user default. The only problem is that falls apart when you use different materials, different end mills, etc. You don't always want the same user user default, and you get around that by using a preset for each tool. So for example, a single tool, let's go back to my tool libraries. Let's just select, a drill. So as you can see, why this is a little brutal at first. For example, look at this Cobalt drill set I have from Haas. It has 25 drills, and each of these drills, if we go into cutting data, has a preset for 3 different materials that I use, right? So it can be a little brutal at first getting that set up, but once you do, now you have that preset and it's easy. When you switch between materials, all you got to do is select that preset again in the toolpath there in the operation, and you're good to go. So that was the second benefit from using Toolpath that I wasn't expecting. Hey, I had to go through, I had to optimize my libraries, I had to set up all my presets. Yes, it was brutal. I just did it a little at a time over a few days. And once I got that done, even when I don't use Toolpath now, my cam flow is much faster because I have those presets. And the other benefit, as I mentioned earlier, was just getting that idea or understanding how AI would attack that feature, and it gives you maybe a learning experience. So you might try it a different way, or AI might do it a different way than what you were thinking about it. So the real downfall right now, and I think the Toolpath guys are probably going to work on this in the future, is that Toolpath, it will generate all the toolpaths to make this part for you, but it doesn't include your fixturing, right? It doesn't include the vise, your 0 point, etc., what you would have on the table of your machine. So my strategy has been, if I'm using the toolpath, auto-generated toolpath here, sorry, it's a little tongue twister, toolpath, right? So I normally go through these, examine, edit, prune, whatever, and then all I do is Control-C to copy, and then I would just come back over here to my setup where I have the part already in my template, and then all I have to do is copy and paste, right? And then boom, there are all the toolpaths. Obviously, you're going to have some issues here because this is a different part, but you get the idea, right? You can easily copy and paste and have all your toolpaths done very quickly. And if it's a simple part, then that's what I'll do. Again, you always want to go through, examine, prune, edit, and always simulate. I mean, even if it's AI generated, once you get all the toolpaths, in your template, what you're going to put on your machine, always simulate. And that's really it, guys. So that's how I use Toolpath. Again, I think it's great. It's really helped me. AI is here. It's part of the future. It's just a matter of how quickly we're going to adopt it. I think within the next few years, maybe not even with Cam, maybe something you're doing at your 9 to 5. I think we're all going to end up using AI in some form or fashion. So get ahead of the game, try it out, try out Toolpath if you get a chance. There's, the customer service there is great. And again, the free trial is well worth it. At a minimum, you'll be forced to go through and edit all your tool libraries and get those optimized, so you'll come out ahead of the game, even if you don't decide to purchase a year of Toolpath like I did. And again, look around too. I mean, maybe there are some other options that you guys can tell me about that you like. Right, this is just the path that I went. So far, I'm happy with it. Again, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch everyone in the next video.